And you are live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Annapolis Board of Appeals regular virtual meeting for September 7th, 2021. This meeting is being broadcast on the City of Annapolis YouTube channel. My name is Bob Gallagher, Chair of the Board. This virtual format allows the public to observe the meeting through the video link and to submit written comments through the City of Annapolis website. Links to the YouTube channel, the comment form, and the city's database for case information about cases on the agenda tonight are found on the agenda. The people that you can see on the screen are members of the Board of Appeals. When a case is called, representatives of the parties to the case will also appear on the screen. Also participating in the meeting tonight are counsel of the Board of Appeals, Cheryl Woods, our recording secretary, Tammy Hook, our technician, Julian Jock, to manage the broadcast. Also participating, we have representatives of the city, including Dr. Sally Nash, Director of Planning and Zoning, Joelle Braithwaite, Assistant City Attorney and Counsel of the Department of Planning and Zoning, Jacqueline Rouse, Liaison to the Board, and one or more other members of the planning staff. We ask everyone but members of the board to mute their audio. If anyone else wishes to speak during the meeting, please raise your hand and I will call on you to speak. Let me remind everyone that communications with the board about any case by anyone other than a party to the case must go through the comment form, while communications by parties must go through board liaison Jackie Rouse. No one should contact any member of the board directly about any case. So, Tammy, if you will, we'll begin the meeting with a roll call.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mrs. Azali,
Here.
Mr. Burnett, Mr. Walsh,
Here.
Dr. Chin,
Present.
Mr. Dews.
Present.
Right, we've got a quorum. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Do we have any corrections or suggested changes? May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. I move the agenda be approved as written.
So second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll move on to the minutes. We have before us for our approval minutes from July 6th, 2021. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Only editorial comment that the chair that day was extraordinarily adept at conducting the meeting. He didn't even notice.
Disregarding that, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. I move the minutes of July 6th be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks,
So the
Michael.
first case on the agenda tonight is Appeal 2020-004. Appeal by neighbors of the approval of the Director of Planning and Zoning of a minor modification to the site design plan for 424 to 428 4th Street. On July 6th, the board heard argument and deliberated on the appeal. And the board affirmed the approval by the director in all respects but one. The board remanded to the director with the request that the director further explain a decision that no additional parking spaces are required in respect of standing room at counter or service areas. The director has provided the board with an explanation, and now it's for the board to decide whether or not the explanation is consistent with the law and the facts of the case. The appellants have submitted, well, all the parties have submitted written arguments on the issue. And will now have an opportunity for a brief oral argument should they choose to avail themselves of that opportunity. So we'll first hear from counsel for appellants, then counsel for applicants, the city, and we'll consider whether any rebuttal is necessary. So leading off, do we have counsel for the appellants?
Yeah, I'm bringing them forward right now.
Okay. All right, Mr. Nelson, the floor is yours.
Good evening, members of the board. Mason Nelson on behalf of the citizen protestants. We all recall, of course, that my clients reside on 5th Street, just behind the subject property. And the focus of this case tonight, of course, is the supplemental articulation by the planning department regarding the standing capacity and its relationship to parking. The relevant section of the ordinance is 22.66.130, which states standing capacity is computed as one person per 7 square feet in front of all counter and service areas. The board is familiar with the layout of the restaurant and bar. The applicant has argued to the board that there is no specific carry-out area, even though we will have customers come in to pick up takeout food. We have not designated a specific area, a specific portion of the counter for takeout. And the director of the planning department on remand articulated the flawed conclusion we respectfully suggest that because there is no specialized carry-out area, there's no requirement that the planning department consider the parking requirements for the standing capacity. We respectfully disagree with that legal conclusion. I respectfully suggest that there's no long-term practice of this interpretation in the city of Annapolis. And indeed, it's contrary to the precise words of the ordinance. And the ordinance says, standing capacity is computed as one person per 7 square feet in front of all counter and service areas. There is no requirement in the ordinance that the counter be a specialized carryout area. So for all those reasons, we respectfully urge this board to conclude that the planning department was required to compute the required parking for the standing capacity and should, for that reason, disapprove of the plan. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to argue this issue briefly before you tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, can you point us to any authority defining counter and service area for this purpose?
No, I cannot. And I respectfully acknowledge the fact that we're in a little bit of a vacuum, but my sense here is that in the absence of long-term administrative practice arriving at this interpretation, it's not entitled to deference. And if we just look at the precise words in the ordinance, it says one person per square feet in front of all counter and service areas. And I think when we have testimony in this case that as up to 10% of the business will be carry out, that the proper interpretation of the parking ordinance is that the staff require parking for the standing capacity.
Members of the board have any questions for Mr. Nelson? All right, then, shall we hear from Mr. Christoph? Mr. Christoph, are you on mute?
Now I am. Once again, Anthony F. Christoph, I'm the attorney for Northeast Holdings, the applicant. Our position, as we've stated to you, is that while there is a counter or service area, to respond to the chair's query, that counter or service area in this situation is the bar. And the bar is completely occupied by the 11 seats which surround it. There is no requirement in the code that you double count for standing capacity and seating capacity. And here, as I've indicated to you, the only area available at the service or bar is the seating area. Those 11 seats have been fully calculated in the parking spaces that are provided in accordance with the 30% calculation. Note also that there is a 10% limitation, as the board is well aware, on carryout from standard restaurants. It's the applicant's position that that 10% is included in the calculations for the parking requirements for the restaurant. So we concur in the director's response to the remand. There is no space designated as service or counter area other than the bar area, fully occupied by the 11 seats, and agree with their conclusion that that is the usual situation for a standard restaurant. And also note that the director correctly concluded that based on the applicant's floor plan, there is no service area that is not included in aisles that lead to other areas of the restaurant, notably on this floor plan to the other seats and to the entrance to the restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christoph. Mr. Braithwaite, anything to add for the city?
From the city's perspective, we have explained something that I didn't think that the director explained previously, because it was just so apparent to her that what was going on in terms of the computation. And we, from the city's perspective, we have provided an explanation of how we have calculated everything. We believe our calculations are accurate and consistent with the way that we have interpreted the law. We know that the director is empowered with the ability to interpret the law and give consistent results across the city to all various applicants. And we have endeavored to do that here. We look forward to the board finding that we have complied with all applicable law and see some parts of this appeal for what it is, which is just an attempt to achieve other arguments, but this argument is probably not particularly germane to the discussion. It's just something that's a part of another part of a different argument, respectfully. And we will just defer to the board at this point.
Thank you, and thank all council for their brevity. Any questions for Mr. Braithwaite or Mr. Christoph? Mr. Nelson, do you feel the need for any rebuttal? Mr. Nelson, we're not hearing you.
Does that work now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I think we've made our core point. I don't wish to belabor it. It's just that the ordinance doesn't require a specific counter area for takeout. So we've made our point. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Sure. Thank you. So I think as a procedural matter, we can go ahead and deliberate and decide tonight whether we accept the director's explanation as adequate. Council Cheryl or anyone else have any disagreement with that? Because this is all a legal argument, I don't think we need to leave this open for another meeting.
No, no disagreement.
Okay, great. So let's, I think all of us were around for most of this case. All of us were around for the deliberations on the 6th. Why don't we honor the most junior of us by inviting Mr. Dews first to tell us what his views are, and we'll work our way back to a decision.
Well, thank you. Maybe I'm the youngest too. All right. No, I would say this is that it's kind of, as was just mentioned, does comply with applicable law. Of course, in the back of my mind, I have to think about theory versus reality. Since I frequent restaurants in Annapolis area, and I do see many deliveries, whether they have waiting areas or not. So, I think that's, a discussion that has to come later, but with everything that's been presented, how computations were done, I concur with how the computations were done, and that as the I guess as of right now, how the restaurant flows, all of the outlines of the of how the traffic's going to come in and out. If you look at the floor plans and look at everything, it doesn't seem to have any type of service area. So that would be my. However, at the same time, there is a reality side that there will likely be deliveries, and we don't know post-COVID how those things will occur with regard to deliveries and Uber Eats and all these other things that are occurring right now. So that's what I would say. We got theory and reality, but as the law is right now and the policy is, my opinion is that it complies with the current law.
Thank you, Mr. Dews. Dr. Chen?
In terms of the memo provided by the director, I was not particularly swayed by the comments that were made with regard to the parking generation manual and the shift that the director is indicating might or might not be happening with regard to the leniency of parking. So I was not particularly swayed by that argument because there wasn't any real data provided. With regard to the code itself and the language in the code, I do agree that the word, sorry. I do agree that the word all is important in terms of counter and service areas, and those have to be taken into account. And we do have the testimony of Mr. Toomey with regard to the fact that there will be takeout occurring in this restaurant. I personally know that I do take out from his restaurant on a regular basis. So I believe that it will occur at his restaurant on 4th Street. However, I am concerned about the double counting, that shouldn't occur. And so the code is a little bit inadequate for me in terms of raising the possibility of double counting. So I do appreciate the director's explanation. I think that's what I was after with regard to exactly what was counted and not counted. And the fact that there is seating counted at the bar was relevant to me. How the takeout is going to be managed, it's not, I think, for me to say. Whether it happens at the bar, presumably the seat, if they dedicate a area at the bar for the takeout, the seat that has been counted at the bar already, in my mind, takes care of that area in terms of calculating the number of parking spaces.
That's very thoughtful. Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ultimately, as it is with all the conditions of the special exception, we are in the position of determining whether the planning director acted reasonably with a reasonable interpretation of the law. And with her explanation, I find that she did act and interpret the current city code reasonably and responsibly. Granted, it's not the most ideal law, and our current city code is perhaps somewhat vague, if not opaque, about this specific area of takeout. But I think it's a reasonable interpretation based on the plans presented to the planning department, and I would support her opinion in this.
Thank you. Mr. Zazali. You're on mute, Christian.
This board finds itself once again in the unenviable position of sorting through language that's been baked into the city code since time immemorial, that has appeared in all respects to get the job done, as they say. Having been on the board for a decade, this statute has been reviewed, found adequate, and has allowed dozens and dozens of restaurant operators to move on and successfully operate a business. But once again, we are proven that language is fungible and it needs to be tuned from time to time. So perhaps yet again, there's an opportunity for this board to make recommendations to our legislative body, and we can ask them to look at this. With that statement, I will say I did find that the planning director did find within her within the boundaries of her authority and interpretation of the code and did so properly, and I find that she did it correctly. More to the point, the legal argument that it has been consistently interpreted and applied across the city equally, I also find that to be accurate. I think this would be a case where dozens and dozens of other calculations would be called into question if that was the case. If spaces that were clearly not intended for employees, for guests to pick up food or wait for their takeout or otherwise would have to be counted in the seating, I think that would have unintended consequences. And with that, I find the planning director's subsequent argument adequate, and I agree with her finding.
Thank you, Christian. As Mr. Nelson pointed out, the ordinance in this case is certainly simple. Space is equal to the number 30% of the seating and standing capacity in person. Standing capacity is computed as 1 person per 7 square feet in front of counter and service areas. No one cited to us any rule defining counter and service areas. The director refers to a longstanding interpretation that the service areas are only those areas designated on the plans as service areas, even where the applicant acknowledges there will be takeout business that will require transaction space, and that common sense would label a service area. So there's no definition of service area except that it's what applicant says it is, basically. The director also interprets the table to mean that the table referencing these requirements, that no standing capacity is counted for bar areas where seats are counted at the bar. She doesn't explain why parking spaces are not necessary for patrons who typically stand and drink near the bar without occupying a chair. So I'm sure none of this seems untoward for the applicants and their attorneys and architects who've become familiar with these informal interpretations through years of dealing. But I expect that many members of the public are as puzzled as I am. My instinct in interpreting these rules would be to err on the side of more parking rather than less because of the congestion in the neighborhood. But the director makes the case that planning professionals believe that changes in behaviors and transportation modes have rendered parking requirements more onerous than they need to be, and she interprets these rules in that light. And I can't say that she's wrong, but from the point of view of having these cases be understood by the public, I think better explanation of that would be appropriate. So joining my colleagues, I intend to vote in favor of finding that the director's explanation is adequate. So I guess it's appropriate for us to have a motion to find that the director's determination is adequate and affirm the approval of the minor site design modifications. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Another difficult case, another chapter in a difficult case that seems to go on. Hope this might be the end of it, but we'll see. Thank you, council and staff, for your work on this. And we'll move on. We'll excuse council and the parties for the 424 4th Street, and we'll move on to extension request in special exception 2020-002. This has to do with the restaurant, special exception for standard restaurant at the old Fawcett property, 110 Compromise Street. I think we have all had a chance to review the letter from Mr. Dale's counsel for the applicants. This is the first request for a 6-month extension of the special exception. Not surprisingly, it's based mainly on delays resulting from the pandemic. Any questions for Mr. Dales? Any discussion on whether we should approve or disapprove this request? Is there a motion?
I would move that the request for a 6-month extension be granted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Mr. Dales, that was a very good argument, and you've succeeded and got your extension. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And thank you, Julian. I appreciate that, and congrats on the move.
Okay,
Good to see you again, Phil.
we can excuse Mr. Dales. Other business, the only other thing I thought was worth mentioning, the subject has come up in the past, most recently a month or so ago, about at what point might we want to return to in-person meetings. And while I think when it first came up, it looked like that opportunity might not be that far away. Circumstances have changed again, with our area being designated a high transmission area, and other boards that have experimented with going back to public meetings have had their share of problems. Certainly no enthusiasm on my part to do that next month or the month after. Any thoughts from my colleagues?
Well, I can tell you in my other volunteer capacity, we are busy, 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 and there's no room at the inn. I can tell you that. We're redirecting.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Well, I'm an EMT with West Annapolis Fire Department, in case you guys didn't know that. And we are redirecting away from Anne Arundel Community Medical Center right now because it is such a popular place to be.
Yeah, I was up there the other day and saw that they have staged tents and out in front of the
Triage.
Yeah, it's frightening.
Mr. Chairman, as a scientist, I would have to advise this board that until the issue of boosters is resolved, I don't believe we should meet in person. I think there is data out there that we do need boosters. And so until the FDA and our present administration get that all worked out, I would recommend we continue virtual.
Good point about boosters. Hadn't actually focused on that. Michael.
While I miss all of you very much, I would prefer to hold off.
Yeah. Any disagreement, Rob?
But I was just going to say, out of curiosity, because I concur with everyone just said, but out of curiosity, are the other, boards, commissioners, what are they doing? I assume they're not meeting either. Is there any policy that's come out from the city standpoint? That they
There's
say
no
an option?
policy, but most boards are still meeting virtually, both because of COVID and because everyone seems to like it better for the most part.
Well, if liking it better was the only reason, I'm not
Yeah.
Right.
sure I would support that.
No.
but-
Right.
Well, I think it has also been said that I think it was either Mark who actually said this, was that attendance for some of the boards has been up because of being able to meet remotely. And that was a plus from an attendance point of view of the members of the commissioner board.
So the attendance of the board
The
members, not the
ability of
public.
Christian to make a meeting is greatly increased.
Astronomically increased.
That's
We-
character assassination, and I won't stand for it.
We've had to cancel 3 commission meetings since we've been virtual versus I think it was around like 40% that would get canceled before.
Wow.
The huge difference. So that's a real plus for the continuing to meet remotely. Do you all want to revisit, say that we're going to continue to meet remotely through September and October, and that you'll revisit it the beginning of November or the end of November? I think we should decide when we're going to revisit it so I can let Hillary
Yeah,
know.
I would say the end of November or
Okay,
December.
end of November.
We certainly could revisit it in November, but unless otherwise stated, I think Bob's correct.
Okay. Just trying to get a timeline for that. Thank you.
Well, good. I don't think we have anything else we need to talk about tonight.
I will not be able to make the 15th. I just, sorry about that. Are we good? You got coverage?
As far
September?
as I know. We good? We've got quorums for the 15th. Jackie?
Well, is everyone else who is here tonight going to be available on the 15th other than Christian?
Yeah, I will.
So that's
Mandatory.
Bob.
I have
will.
mandatory training. Can't get out of it.
Great.
I expect to be, yes, I will be.
Your EMT training, is that what you're doing?
Yeah, recertification to drive the ambulance.
Ooh, gotta watch out when I
That's
see
funny.
those.
Watch
Scary.
out.
Now.
Kidding,
Watch
isn't it?
out.
Yeah.
You say that until I'm standing over you, saving your life.
You guys, I've had that experience. You guys have done it. I've got
And Rob,
nothing but admiration.
Yes. I'm
so
good
if
for
we
the
have the
15th.
4 of you, we will definitely have a quorum. Bob, Mike, Rob, and Nadine. And we have 2 items on the agenda scheduled for the 15th. I was waiting until tomorrow morning to send you the agenda and my package because I didn't want it to get mixed up with tonight's stuff. But I did finally send the agenda out today. So the 2 items on the meeting agenda are a request for live entertainment for a new restaurant that's going to locate at 114 West Street, and an early childhood center called Primrose School that's at the intersection of Hilltop and Spa Road.
Yeah.
The only thing that I have in terms of a package for 114 West Street that you might want to look at is the floor plan, and I will be happy to deliver that package to you, but you're really only getting the floor plan because the restaurant itself is a permitted use. So all it's going to show you is where they're having live entiretainment.
Right.
So unless it's really important to you, I will just email the staff report and the application. But that's totally up to you all.
That sounds
That's fine with me. That's fine.
It's not a lot of plans to look at, unlike the other application, which is a full set of drawings.
Good. Okay, I hope we'll see each of you on October 1st. Yes, Christian?
Question for Dr. Nash. Are you guys all recovered down there from all the emergency permits? What's your status at the planning department? Caught up? Still behind?
Well,
We actually had our first permit today that had to be reviewed for zoning, the very first one.
a lot of it is roofs. But we also had a lot of people in apartments who had issues. So those, that it's not going to be individual homeowners coming in. It's going to be big management
Oh, wow.
companies coming in with several, with a big project. And those, a lot of them haven't come in because they're waiting on insurance money.
Yeah.
We did get a
I've just basically told my circle of people to stay away if at all possible. Don't go down to the planning department. I don't know how busy it all is. Just checking.
Good advice.
It hasn't been too busy because I think it's because we're waiting for insurance. So
Okay.
hopefully all the insurance money doesn't come in all at once. So,
Hopefully the permits will kind of trickle in, as people get their, but we did have one today for Fitzgerald's Auto for they submitted for their permit.
What was the
And
number of
repair- and that-
structures deemed
It's supposed to be
inhabitable?
Extensive repairs. It was a big
ones-
number. The permit, I can't
there were
remember.
a lot that were placarded, but most of those did by yesterday, today end up, they were habitable. There were just some kind of minor issues like wires down or something like that where we didn't want people in. So it's not that many residents that were actually destroyed, like more in the 4 or 5 houses, and then a few businesses along West Street and Lee Street are in pretty bad shape.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for that.
But no one was killed or injured, so
Which
Yeah,
is
remarkable.
amazing.
amazing.
So Christian, did you have any EMT trips related to?
No, I unfortunately I was stuck at the intersection of Route 2 and West Street during the tornado.
Really?
Good Lord.
I watched it all unfold, and I ran through my survival what if options, and I came up wanting. There was not a lot I could do. I just hunkered down, pulled my seatbelt tight, and watched the drama unfold. I was coming out of Whole Foods, waiting to take the right. I was literally at the yield in front of the little jewelry store.
No.
Really?
Had I been just a little quicker, I might have been further down West Street.
That must have been really scary.
It was over before you knew it, but it was definitely, it was raining so hard that you really couldn't see what was going on.
Wow.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.